So, good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to another interview of the Shield Door on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector, and today on the couch, I'm joined by Dan. He sings and plays guitar on the band Low Heaven, which are putting out their first album because they had an EP, and the album's called Ritual Decay. It will be out August the 29th on MNRK Heavy. And we have Dan here with us. So, Dan, how are you, man?
Doing well. Just got home from a long day at work, so it's nice to jump into something kind of fun, you know?
Yeah, no, I bet. Do people at work know you have a band?
Uh, Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
My coworkers are definitely aware of it.
No, it's good because I've talked to musicians before and they ask, oh, I'm in a rock band. And people ask, do you sound like Bon Jovi?
Yeah.
You're like,
I I get that question a lot, and I think I've learned over the years to kind of dodge around it a little bit. Like I'm like Bon Jovi, yeah, that works, instead of having to dig into what this all is. So
exactly. So the project you guys started this project, this band back in 2020. Tell us a little bit about how you guys formed Low Heaven.
so we all kind of have existed around each other without really realizing it for a long time. Excuse me. I was in a band previous to this that did a ton of touring all through the years. Oh, swallowed some water funny there. So basically, I was in a band from about 2009 up until 2020 that did a fair amount of touring and kind of was around everywhere. And when that came to a very abrupt end, right about the start to middle of the first year of the pandemic, Alex, who was also in that band with me towards the end, and I decided that we wanted to do something different. Instead of just kind of letting things go, we were going to kind of jump on into something new. And Mikey, our bass player, had done the last shows of 2020 in the band that he was in with our old band. And so it was kind of like a coincidental, but like meeting of the stars kind of moment where we played these shows together. And then shortly after this, the world exploded. And so we all just kind of ended up in each other's realm and discussed it for a little bit. The Coles notes of everything is just everything was chaos. So we were trying to figure that all out. And then just started getting to work. And it was a very odd way of working on things, but it brought us to here. So I can't complain too much.
Yeah, no, and listening to your band, I get a lot of like 90 like vibes I have some bands in particular we should say like a K-Bean meets Deftones type of thing, like especially in the ethereals and the vocals, and sometimes you're like aggressive. So yeah, tell me a little bit about like when you were starting this project, like what you wanted Low Heaven. Did you sit down like, hey, let's have this sound different from our other bands, or did it just happen organically? You guys playing and just ended sounding that way?
I think it's a little bit of both. I'm a massive Cave-In fan, so every time somebody brings that up, I get really like it's a good compliment for me. Because they are my favorite band by a long shot, and I think some people could easily tell that's the case. That being said, we never really set out with a decided factor of like this is what we wanted to sound like. We actually got together all together with a drummer once in a rehearsal space before everything kind of shut down for the second time. And the first song that we ended up writing, which ended up becoming something for Low Heaven, sounded extremely different than any of the stuff that we ended up with. Um, I think a byproduct of the like severe isolation that was going on up here in Canada during the pandemic was a extreme push factor for stuff to be heavy, for stuff to be dark, for stuff to be kind of sludgy, because I think that was a sonic representation of how we were all feeling during this time. I don't think we were getting a ska band out of this. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not getting anything happy out of it. And the more and more that we kind of dug in, and the more and more we started investing, the deeper down this hole we started going, where we just realized like this is going to be the heaviest band that any of us have ever been involved in, and it is entirely just because of what's going on. That being said, I'm very happy to have ended up where we did, but there was no conscious decision to be like, we're making a heavy band. It just kind of went that way. Um, and all things considered, I think that it's kind of makes sense. Like when you start diving into the record, you start diving into the themes of everything. Like I said, it's not like we were getting a ska record out of this. It was going to be heavy.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of ska bands right now.
Up in Canada, you'd be surprised. I don't know if we're just behind on the times right now, but Goldfinger is a big deal.
Oh well, cool. Well, here in Puerto Rico in the '90s, ska was huge, but I haven't heard a lot of ska in a long time. I like it too, but yeah, this is more heavier stuff, but heavy with some melody. So I also listened to your 4-song EP Collapse from 2023. I love the song from that Cancer Sleep. I was reading that you recorded, I don't know if the full length or only the EP in an old church.
Yeah, everything was recorded in an old church in New Jersey. This beautiful studio called the Barber Shop, but I don't know when it stopped functioning as a church. I know that studio's been there for a while, but the like big tracking room where we did the drums and where a lot of that stuff is still like styled like the old church with the stained glass windows and like the big kind of tall room that's up there. Like you can still tell where the altar was, if that makes sense. But it is absolutely gorgeous, and the sound that you get out of a lot of these things is just like unrivaled, because you're dealing with such a big crazy room, and there's not going to be another one that's built like that. It's not like all churches are built like McDonald's, you know what I mean? um but it's funny to be in a band like we are and then think about us being in a church recording all of this stuff. It's just kind of like an ironic little tidbit there of like, this doesn't seem to make sense, but we made it make sense.
Well, it's not like it's evil, evil stuff. It's like heavy subject matter. So I think for people, since I listened to the EP and the album, I think the EP sounds good, but I think on the album, you get to flesh out more the sound of Low Heaven. Tell me a little bit about uh, how you know how you guys worked on this record, and especially like your thought process when you're writing the lyrics.
So all of this was pretty much written separately. Whether I had a song idea or Mikey has an idea or whatever it is, we were doing these in separate places. Getting to meet up every once in a while when something would kind of work out, but just being extremely isolated and kind of going through that whole thing. And as someone that tends to be a little bit more solo in a sense. There's a difference between choice isolation and forced isolation. And that definitely played a big part into what was going on. So the writing of this was really unusual. We were all kind of learning how to use recording software and how to like get sounds for things. And like I learned how to program drums, which is not something I thought I would ever know how to do. But that's what came into having to figure out how to write all this stuff, how to re-demo and re-demo and re-demo, because that's what we did for like almost 2 years, is like write a song, rewrite a song, reorganize it, all this sort of stuff. And I think by the time we got to the point of kind of whittling down from demos to the songs that we were actually going to record, I want to say there was probably 35 to 40 songs there, and we whittled it down to I think 14, and that's what we brought into the studio. But as we started to kind of work on those, it became very apparent what songs were going to be, songs that we wanted to record, and what stuff was going to be like, okay, well, we like this riff, but the rest of it is not as strong. Um, and so we were kind of whittled it down and did one more batch of demos where things were really flushed out. But then they started to take a mind of their own once we got to the studio. And I think that that kind of plays out in a couple different ways. For one, we didn't have a drummer in the band at the time that we were recording this. So we actually had somebody that Brett, our producer and our engineer, was friends with, that was like, this is the right guy to come in and do this. And when you listen to the recordings, it's extremely obvious that he was the right person to do it with. But coming in and knowing that you're going to be constructing kind of a specific vibe to the songs, with somebody coming in and playing something that's not what you designed originally, we knew that we were coming into an environment where we were going to get to be creative in the same way and take our last set of demos and still turn them into something else. But at the same time, we were really buying into continuing that vibe. So, watching a lot of horror movies in the studio, working very late into the night, versus, like kind of cutting ourselves off at a certain time and then getting up the next morning and going. Like, we were kind of pulling the strings to the point where we were all like a little strung out and a little bit like overtired and a little bit kind of pushing the envelope as far as emotions going after these performances to make sure that we met what we thought in our heads with the product that ended up being out there at the end of the day. As far as the lyrics go, I'm definitely a tinkerer. I had written, I want to say, probably 6 to 7 different versions of lyrics for each song minimum. I ended up rewriting most of them in the studio again, whether it was tweaking certain parts or just like getting a grasp of the final feel of this record. Whether again, and that also could be like pulling lyrics from different songs to construct a new song within that. But I was also taking myself out of it. At the studio, I was isolating myself from everybody else as far as like where we were sleeping. I was sleeping down in the lounge, whereas everybody else was kind of in like a more, appropriate like setting for like sleep and kind of, doing that sort of thing. Like, I was completely separated from everybody else. So I could spend a couple extra hours working on the lyrics, reworking on stuff, taking the basic mixes and like rewriting some things and just getting myself to the point where I knew that the lyrical representation was going to match the musical intensity that was there. And I know I put a lot of stress on myself to make sure that we achieve, or that I achieved that in a way that really made sense. And I think we definitely got there, but also like we left the recording session and drove home, and I easily slept for 3 days. Like, I was so burnt and so like exhausted from the whole thing, where it was absolutely worth it. But I was like, I was sleeping 12 to 14 hours, getting up for a few hours and then going back to sleep just to kind of recover from that.
So it seems like that sleep deprivation and sleep and alone help, like because yeah, it shows in the for people. Obviously I've heard the record, but it is an angry one. So you have a drummer now, right?
Yes, yeah. It was, I don't know, kind of our lot in life to kind of struggle with this a little bit, to like find the right person. We've been really lucky to have good people surround us kind of across the board. So even when Dante, who played drums on the record, incredible musician, incredible human being, and then getting to tour with some of the drummers that we've toured with, again, same sort of thing. Like, the right people seem to keep finding us, which is such a beautiful thing. Because as most people know, like, you can be in a band and just struggle to find like the right piece, or like somebody that fits in or meshes well, or just any of these other things. And we've been really lucky. Like, we are definitely like a family. Like, the people that are in our crew are in our crew. That's it. And we've been really lucky that that family has been very tight knit and very accepting. So, bringing somebody in that gets the idea of what we're trying to do and can get their own emotional attachment to it, even though they weren't part of, say, the writing process or whatever goes along with that. We've been really lucky because, like, sometimes you can struggle with that sort of thing. And for some reason, we just keep falling into the right spot.
Good, good. I was gonna make a joke about a drummer. Like if you hadn't had a drummer, I heard Josh Freeze is available.
It might turn into a Spinal Tap thing, though, where he just spontaneously combusts and disappears. And I think there'd be more than a few people upset with us taking Josh Freese out of the world, you know?
Awesome, but yeah. So let's talk about the first single that is out, "Chemical Pattern," which there is a music video. Tell us a little bit about that song, both musically and lyrically.
That one, that one is probably the only song on this record that doesn't have a very direct to a personal thing. That was a bit more of a response to um, not only responding to, again, like the pandemic and the chaos that was going on, but also just what felt like the meltdown of civilized existence. It's still definitely a personal song in the sense that a lot of it has to do with like the impact of what was going on around me to me. But that one really has a lot more to do with just like, I'm walking home from work and seeing people get in a fist fight on the side of the road because somebody didn't cross the road fast enough. Like just like things that are no longer problems that were problems in a very specific manner where you're just seeing the worst of everybody. And that, along with many other things, was a lot to kind of stomach given what was going on with everything, but also to like being dragged through hell in a lot of different ways and then seeing that manifest in front of you. It was just kind of fucked up, if excuse my language. And this song is like a direct response to that, of like everything is fucked. Like I don't understand, I don't have an answer for this. We just have to survive it.
It's like the great thespian Fred Durst once said. Everybody's fucked. Like, wait,
It's true. Everything sucks
everybody sucks.
and everything's fucked. But like I can't get away with that kind of poetry if we're being honest with it. But but that's really what it was, and I think that that song, it kind of feels that way too, because I had a second set of lyrics written for this song. Like I said, I had numbers and numbers of lyrics for all of the songs, and I remember when we were getting ready to track this, I was kind of like playing the two out in my head, and I had a way that I could hear it being done. Because I also think like the vocal delivery on this song is very different from the rest of the record. It kind of stands on its own a little bit more, as a little bit more panicked versus like the rest of the record I feel is very heavy, but it comes from a very like emotional kind of like soul tearing way. And this one has a bit more of like a panic to it, or a bit more of like a panic attack vibe to it. And I think that it just made more sense to be coming from the position of just like, what the fuck? And I think that that's pretty obvious in both the music and the lyrics, that that's kind of what's going on. Because it's also like a pretty jarring song when you take the structure of how it's going. There's a lot of just like kind of parts to it. And I think that that really suits it.
Yeah, no, it has that chaotic feel to it. But you have different styles. Like for example, there's a song called I think I'm Heist. I think I wrote
Amherst, yeah.
Amherst, which
Yeah.
like that soothing, like that what I would call like that horny Chino Moreno vibes. When he does that in ways, but it's a song that has like sometimes it's soothing and then it gets chaotic, and also then you have songs like "Fucking Hell," which is also like a very like different moods. Tell me a little bit about the first one I asked. I know it's not already out, but we can talk about the song.
Yeah, Amherst is definitely, that's the first song that we wrote as a band. That's the one where it came out as like a very different style. That was also probably the song we were done with last. It is an extremely uh personal and kind of like chest tearing song. Um, it was tough to let go of that song. Like when we were getting into the studio and knowing that I was gonna have to like put vocals to that song and put the pieces together for that, I really didn't want to do it. Like I kept putting it off. We would do vocal takes for other stuff. We did the instrumentals for that song, and like we had some kind of like beautiful studio magic happen where these things started working that we had never really planned for. And then Brett would be like, "All right, dude, it's time to do some vocals," and I'd be like, "No, let's go do something else." And I kept putting it off and kept putting it off because I wasn't kind of ready to do it. And when it finally got time to doing the vocals for that song, it like we're a very collaborative bunch. We're very like, oh, this didn't work. Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. And the I was in the vocal booth, everybody was fucking silent. Like no one was saying anything. And I would do a take and be like, okay, I need to do this differently. And Brett would just be like, okay. Like there'd be no other communication, no or nothing. And it was kind of like everybody knew that I had to work through it and like take ownership of what that was and kind of get through that song. And that's Amherst to a T. Um it's definitely going to be a hard song to play live if that's something that we're trying to do, because once you've finished the creative process of getting all of these emotions and getting all of the feelings out that you're after, every time you play it you're kind of like picking at the scar after that, whereas this one I don't feel like it's scarred over at all. Like even just listening to it is kind of like it kind of hurts me in a way that I can't really describe. But I also think that that's why that song sticks out as a different way, because we weren't going to be able to succeed in getting that feeling and that vibe of that song as a balls to the wall aggressive like riff machine. It wasn't going to happen. And that song definitely stands out in the record as it is a bit of an oddball one. But also I think it carries the weight in a different way when you compare it to the rest of the record that's got like the heavy anxious like emotional weight. This one's got the same thing, but it's a different execution. And I do hope that that kind of gets through to people when like the song is finally out there and people can digest it as like it fits with what this is, but it's different. It's a different side of what Low Heaven can do. But I'm also very, very nervous to let go of it, like I've been saying the whole time. Like I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel once that's out in public and out there for people to consume and make it their own thing.
Yeah, maybe it's because on that song you're more vulnerable. And I can when I think of like songs that I don't know if like artists can play again, I remember that first album by Korn, the last song, Daddy. I have no idea how Jonathan Davis can sing that song more than once. So when you're being like vulnerable like that, on this song, on your song in particular, without giving obviously the whole song away, like what's the theme on that song that you're trying to tackle?
So a lot of the record is coming to terms with like significant loss in my life, in a bunch of different ways. Coming to terms with a lot of changes that I wasn't really willing to accept, and kind of the internal battle of those things. Amherst is really kind of like admitting to myself that that's where we're at, and kind of trying to let go of, in essence, a lot of bad that I had done in a lot of different ways, whether it was self-destructive or with other relationships or anything else that had gone on with that. Not necessarily letting go of the guilt that goes along with that, but letting go of the fact that I wasn't willing to admit that to myself. And it has to like from there it spreads out into a lot of different things. It's not about any one thing after that. But there was a lot of coming to terms with changes that were going on, things even just within myself that had to be different. And that's kind of where all of this stuff spurred. And there's a lot of kind of guilt that goes along with that. So this song is kind of like in very indirect way of like dealing with all of that, but also coming to terms with the fact that I have to accept all of these things. And change is not easy for most people. It's really not easy for me. So, kind of dealing with that in this way, and allowing myself the ability to be like, yeah, you fucked up a lot. Um, it's people are going to take what they're going to take from there, and that's the beautiful thing about art across the board, whether it's poetry or painting or music or any of these things. Like the person that creates it has a version of it. In this band, I'm sure the people that were involved in creating it, not just me, they have their versions of what this song means. But then as it goes out, people are going to take their value from that. They're going to take their worth from that. And that's definitely, I think, one of those songs that um, it's not going to be just one thing. Chemical Pattern is definitely one thing. Like it exists in its world, but like that is a song of just being like, oh, what the fuck, And I think people will pick up on that pretty easily. This one is a little bit different. I think there's a few on the record that'll probably feel like that too, where it's just like There is no forgiveness, there is no end, there is no that. And this one is just a very specific version of that.
Yeah, no, and I wrote like so. For example, a song like "Nothing Else," "Frail." I love the guitar tone on that one. Uh, I like the slower singing, moodier on "Fucking Hell." But so when you're working on the studio with the producer and you're like in the booth alone, like like did he like you said that he was okay? He didn't push you like to get more vulnerable. He didn't go all Ross Robinson on you.
Hit and miss, truthfully. Brett is an old friend. My band previous to this actually worked with him on a record, which is how we kind of got the wheels moving as to like this would probably be a good fit for Low Heaven. He is a musical dictionary in a way that I've not really experienced with a lot of other people. Like I'm obsessed with music in a bad way. Like it takes over more of my brain than it ever should. You know, it's I've gotten better as I've gotten older, but like in my 20s I was like I don't want to hang out with you. I want to listen to this record four times. You know, like that's where my brain goes. Brett is like the creative mind that would go with that kind of obsession, but in a way that he can communicate a lot of stuff. So when we would come in with this, not only does he have the musical background of what we're trying to do, but he's also got the musical background of fucking everything else that's going on. So there'd be times where he'd be Ross Robinson the shit out of us, and then he'd be times where he would just sit back. Um, Truthfully, I also have my own like Ross Robinson thing that I picked up from a guy named Kenny Bridges that my old band had recorded a bunch with, and it's called Discipline. And it's kind of a joke, but it also kind of works where it's like if you're not able to nail what you're trying to do, you punch yourself in the leg a few times. And it just gets worse and worse the more you do it. And the joke is like it's not actually a real thing, but the joke is like the more that it gets annoying, the more that it pushes you to like do a better take and to do a better thing like that. But I use it as like a tension breaker. You know, like, oh, I'm not getting this right now, it's time for some discipline, and I like stand up and like but I'm not actually doing anything to it. It's to kind of make you laugh and break the tension and do that whole thing. So that's our Ross Robinson. But Brett would sometimes lean in and just be like, "No, dude, you got to do that again. You got to push that a little harder. You got to do this sort of thing," and kind of like be stern with it. But it was never to the point of like, I want to throw this guy in the lake. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
so there's a fine balance between those, and he definitely hits it. And like with everything too, like if a baseline isn't quite there, he would be pushing Mikey and pushing Mikey and pushing Mikey, and then you could see the point where it would be kind of over the ledge, and that's where he would pull it back. And I think that that's a really you gotta everybody's gonna find their different version of that, but that's where him and I and our group really mix because he knows our line very well and was very quick to pick up on that.
awesome, man. So you talk when you're in the studio watching some horror movies. Any horror movies in particular that got you like in that writing headspace?
A lot of David Cronenberg stuff for obvious reasons. There, I never know how to pronounce the name of this movie. I think it's Titan or Titan or something like that. We actually watched that movie, I think, four times. That movie is fucked in the best way. But like there was a lot of this kind of like over the top horror, for lack of a better term, things that were spurring a lot more not negative emotion, but just like stressful emotion. Cause you'd be sitting there and you'd be working on something and you look up and somebody's like arm is getting cut off. Like you're not looking up and seeing Family Guy or something like that. Like it's visually there. And you might just kind of go like, huh, but after 3.5 weeks of that, it's really starting to drive an idea home. When you're going, you know, it's fucking midnight and you're going to do vocal takes and you've been seeing this all day and you've been in that studio, it does start to fuck with your brain a little bit. And I think the wonderful thing that came out of that was the fact that we were very focused on the art, very focused on getting exactly the feels that we were after, but everything else that was around us was in complement to the same thing. You know, like We weren't surrounded by big pushy thing distractions and video games and all this stuff. It was, we're in this room, we're doing guitars, everybody's there. We're doing vocals, the guys in the vocal booth, everybody else is there. This is what you're seeing, this is what you're feeling, this is what you're doing. And it all played a part in creating the the record as it is and the emotions as they are. And like, not to say that we couldn't got there in a different way, but it was the right way for us, like the right way for Brett, the right way for everybody. Even Dante, the guys coming and playing drums for us, like he would sometimes show up and it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and like some crazy movies on, and he's like, "Oh, this is pretty early to be getting into this," and like, and it's just part of creating something of that magnitude.
For you, was is because I think there's some people that are more creative at night. Do you find that
Uh,
you
that's that's definitely me. I struggle. I'm not a morning person. A lot of people will laugh when they try and do something with me in the morning. I'm a bit of a zombie. I kind of don't exactly understand what's going on right away. Whereas I can easily stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning and be extremely productive. So again, swinging into that a little bit was kind of already happening with the writing of the lyrics and the way that things were going, but also like, we would start working somewhere between 10 and 11. We'd still be working at midnight a lot of the nights. And stuff that you're getting done during the day that's a little less emotional based, whether it was Dante coming in and doing a couple of drum tracks, or like working out a sound for something that is subjective versus objective. And then the later it went on, the more we would start digging into things, the more the vocal takes would start happening, the more that like some of the moodier or like, stuff that's slightly out of character for what we're trying to do, that's when that stuff would start rolling in and more. I don't think we started doing any kind of vocals before 6 o'clock at night at all, like across the board. Um, and the farther and farther it went in, the more and more we started doing the intensity stuff, the more that we started to do the things that make you uncomfortable and make the sounds that make you uncomfortable. And that was definitely the case with this, and I think is probably definitely the case with most of the creation in this band. Like we all tend to operate a little better that way.
awesome? So let's look at the artwork for the record. So
Yeah.
and discuss, because the artwork really, when you look at this artwork, I'm pretty sure no one's gonna feel like, yeah, this is the feel good record of the year. Uh, so Low Heaven, Ritual Decay. So tell me a little bit about what you guys were going for with this artwork.
So Joel, who did the layout for us, we actually met him a couple of years ago. We were on tour with the band Holy Fawn, and he had come out to our San Francisco show. And I will openly admit that I had been following him on social media, I want to say for about a year to a year and a half prior to that. So I was walking by and heard someone say his name, and I stopped and like turned and was like, "I'm going to interrupt you right now. I fucking love what you're doing." And so him and I chatted for a little while. He stayed stuck around for the show, obviously kind of dug what we were doing. And it was always in the back of our heads, like, we're going to do something with this guy. Because he has a very specific way of how he does stuff. He's extremely creative. And we just kind of knew that we would mesh personality wise, and he would get a good idea of what we were after. We have a very specific idea of a lot of things that have to do with this band, the way things work, the way we present ourselves, like the art, the everything. So when we finally got to the point that we were starting to do this, we had thrown a few ideas around. I'm a huge Aaron Turner fan, so obviously not just from music, but just in general. So I was really interested in talking to him. We talked to a few other people, but Joel was always kind of at the top of the list or in the top two or three, and getting an opportunity to work together in an expansive way. So we reached out, we sent him the record. We're like, let us know what you think. If you think we can do something cool. He got back to us really quickly. And I want to say within a couple of weeks, he had sent us like 7 or 8 ideas. And I was like slightly overwhelmed by that. Like, I did not expect someone to come in and be like, here's all these different things I can do. And that's really what it was. And very quickly, us in the band and him figured out like this is where we need to be going with this. This is where we need to kind of like dive in a bit. And we kind of nailed down the general idea pretty quickly. And then it was just specifics more than anything. And I'm really excited for people to see the entire layout because it all is very cohesive. But the inside artwork as well has a very true to Low Heaven vibe of how it's all laid out. And he just really got it. And he's worked with some other bands that are really great bands, not just Holy Fawn, but I feel like with us, he really honed in on what we were really about with this record, what we were really after, and found a way to kind of bring his art vibe into the visuals of what we wanted out of it. He is a fantastic artist. I could talk about him for 2 hours. It would be a podcast just about Joel. Everybody that's listening, I hope you will go find his Instagram. It's Joel RGB. He is fantastic, and it was an absolute pleasure to work with him. But he, like you said, everybody's looking at this. It's not like it's going to be a Hanson record. Like you kind of know what you're getting, but also he focused in so specifically on some of the imagery that we were using and then created his version of that. And like I can't like to in my head I don't see any other record cover. Like I don't see any other layout. Like he nailed it. And it's just a pleasure to get to work with people like that. Like there's infinite artists out there, but when you admire somebody so much and then you get a chance to work with them in a way that is so like meaningful, like this is the entire representation of our music that people are going to see as the first thing they grab when they buy a record. And to just have him like fucking Aaron Judge it, just smoke it out of the ballpark was such a beautiful thing. And it just makes me excited to work with him more. But also like we've got like a friendship now that's built around art, and that's just a beautiful thing. But yeah, I'm really excited for people to see the whole representation of it all because the cover is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but the layout as one big thing, I think is a beautiful art project that goes right along with the vibe and the feelings that we've been trying to do with the music. Like it's a perfect visual representation of it.
I want to see it. So something that I love is like he got even the details, like Visual Decay. It's even the name of the album is Decay.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's a great album artwork, uh, and yeah, it really. I think he knocked it out of the park because the artwork really goes with the music. It's like because the music and it's cool that you tour with Holy Fawn. I love them. I love that like heavy shoegaze type of bands, and
Yes.
you have some shoegaze elements like to your music, like in the harder aspects of shoegaze,
Yeah.
because it's a your sound is hard to. It's not like, oh, this is this sound. No, because you have like metal, you have like rock, you have like different elements. So yeah, it's not a like post whatever. There's so many fucking genres now. Back in the 90s, it would be easier. You have like rock, and now it's like I'm like, how many? Sometimes I hear like newer stuff. Like last year, I heard someone say that there's a bimbo core. I'm like, oh my god. I'm,
I kind of very truthfully, I kind of love that. The genres aren't really a thing anymore.
yeah,
Touring with Holy Fawn was a perfect example of that because they're like 9 different bands at once, but only done in their way. And touring with Holy Fawn, I would do that over and over again till the day I died, and it would be great. Like they're a great bunch of people, but also they're an inspiring show to see. But like the amount of times that I've had conversations with people where I'm like, it doesn't make sense to try and tell you what this sounds like anymore. Just listen to it, whether it's my band or other bands, you know? There's so much out there, and like describing bands as death metal doesn't do it anymore. Describing bands as post-hardcore doesn't really do it anymore because everybody's idea of that is different nowadays.
yeah. When I review albums, I have to get creative.
I
Sometimes,
like that though. It's keeping your brain alive, you know?
yeah, I have to get and say, okay, this sounds like this, or maybe I'll say like if you like, I'll say in the reviews if you like this and this band, you will like this band. because
That's a safer one. I think that's a little bit safer, because like what if you're talking about Deaf Heaven, like what record are you talking about? They're so vast and their
oh,
discography is all different, you know what I mean? So what would you describe that as? So I get it. I like the comparison a little bit, but also I love the fact that people, like we've been talking about before, people will find their version. Like I love the heavy Deaf Heaven, but also that new record has got some rippers. And it's not the same as Sunbather. It's not the same as the stuff before that, and it's not the same as New Bermuda, but they're still a band that the word that you would use is heavy. Like other than that, like what are you gonna say?
the new Def Heaven is probably in my top 10 albums of the. I still don't know because there's still stuff coming out, but it's
Of
probably.
course.
I have the previous one on vinyl, which is the one that is totally shoegaze. Uh,
Yeah.
but I love shoegaze, so I have no problem with that. So this the name Low Heaven. Is there a story behind your name?
So we had a bunch of different names for this band, and it seemed like the longer we went, the more that the band name that we were working with would kind of disappear. Like it wouldn't be suiting enough or it wouldn't fit the thing. But also, we really wanted to choose a name where you didn't know what the band sounded like when you heard the name. It could go any different direction with that. And sometimes, like, if you hear the word Megadeth, you know what that band sounds like before you've even listened to it. Slayer, another one of those things. As bands started to kind of trickle down and all of these genres started to go crazy, there was kind of a certain pattern that would sometimes happen. um for the reference that this has to do with has more to do with the Charles Bukowski thing, where there's like a little reference to it, and we were like, oh, that's kind of cool. But it more so came from the fact that when you take for example, religious look at it, it's got a bunch of different kind of vibes to it, but they're all taken in a relatively speaking negative way. When you start looking to it in an economical sense, it's always kind of in a negative way. And the more and more we kind of dug into the name, the more and more we were like, you know what, this kind of fits. The more it kind of took like a value of its own within that too, because I think for us, the name has a lot to do with the output of what we're doing. Um, but also, just like everything else in this band, there is a way to take a personal side of that. If you come from a specific background, there is a low heaven definition that goes with that. It might not be the exact wording of that. It might not be the exact way that that works, but it's there. And that's what we really loved about that is like you don't know what you're getting out of it, but for us, it really does signify a specific feeling of what this band is. We're not going to make a hard right turn and become a 90s grunge band after this. Like we've defined what this is, and that works really well for us. But as far as where the name actually came from, it's from a very specific Charles Bukowski thing, and that's about as far as I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, no, it's good. You maybe someday you'll tour with Def Heaven. It
I
should.
would love that.
It will
I
be
would love that.
the Heaven tour.
Someone mentioned to us that it would be funny to do Deaf Heaven, Super Heaven, and Low Heaven. And I was like, that would actually be a fun tour because there's a lot of rocking, like
There's
distorted.
a band, yeah.
Sorry?
There is a band named Super Heaven that
Yeah, they're like a very 90s kind of rip and rock.
I bought that album on vinyl. I love it.
It's good. I played with that band. I'm just showing my age a little bit. I played with that band a long, long time ago, and I remember them setting up their gear. And I'm like a giant gearhead. Like I love to take amps apart and do all this shit. And I remember the one guitar player put up a VTM head, which is not very common. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I know what these guys are going to sound like, and they were like the perfect version of it. I've seen them a few times over the years, and they're always just like consistent, but their guitar tone is really hard to ignore. It's really in your face. It's really like I don't want to compare them to Silverchair because they're not, but it's that Silverchair freak show, like really upfront guitar sound, and it's just fucking good. Like there's no
Yeah,
other way to say it.
different vocally, but yeah, that would be a great
Yeah.
tour. Someone make it happen.
I
The
would love that.
Super
We will open that show, no problem. No fights there. Yeah.
It would be called the Free Heaven Tours.
Yeah.
It's so different because you have like Death Heaven is like more black metal. Then you have the grunge, and then you have you guys doing your thing. So yeah, that would be a great tour. That would,
I wouldn't be upset to be on it, I'll tell you that.
yeah, I just planted the seed there. Like
We'll make some phone calls.
that would be awesome. So you like me, I've been obsessed with music. That's why I have a YouTube channel. So like growing up for you, like what albums were the albums that you were obsessed about?
It's funny because it kind of goes all over the place. My family's extremely musical. My grandfather could play anything. But my dad was a drummer and was really into like Black Sabbath and that kind of stuff, but also then like weird Canadian bands like Triumph, and I don't expect you to know who that is.
Oh,
So
heard that thing. Yeah.
yeah, so I was always kind of surrounded by it, but my joke that I tell people is I like anything with a really loud guitar, but it's pretty painfully obvious. Like the second CD I ever owned in my life was Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and I bought that when I was like 10. Um, I love the Smashing Pumpkins like an insane amount. Exactly.
I
Yeah,
have
I love it.
final. The
Billy Corgan is literally in town right now. He's doing his like solo tour, and I wanted to go and couldn't justify the ticket price. I was so like torn on it, but also like fuck. Like I'm kind of mad at myself for not doing it, but
You know what? You stuck to your principles. You know what? I love Billy too, but when you have Jimmy fucking Chamberlain as your drummer, like in James Iha, why the fuck are you doing a solo tour playing Smashing Pumpkin songs? Play your own stuff.
yeah. If they had come as the Smashing Pumpkins, because they're playing a venue here called History,
We
and
wouldn't.
normally they play the arenas. You know what I mean? Like they're playing stuff big. I would have paid $200 to see Smashing Pumpkins in that venue, but I'm not paying to see Billy Corgan do. I don't know. But
I saw
yeah, I sorry.
I
Go
saw
ahead.
Miami.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
the 2018 when they did the tour, that it was like celebrating the anniversaries for Siamese Dream, and they played for 2.5 hours, and but it was awesome because
Yeah.
it was the band.
Yeah. There's some there's some bands that I don't wanna see get back together. There's some bands that I do, and then there's some bands that it doesn't matter. I just wanna see it. And I can't imagine the Smashing Pumpkins stage show is very exciting because those guys are all kinda getting up there, but to hear it, it's gotta be ripping. Like, there's no way it's not. And, like, they have so many songs that 2.5 hours sounds right. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't have a problem with any of that.
Actually, the show they had great visuals. It was a pretty cool
Oh,
show.
yeah?
Yeah, it was a. I don't know. The '90s kid in me wept. Well,
I I'm a little like, I wasn't in the heyday, like, to be 10 years old and buying Melancholy, I, like, kind of was just I wanted to do it, like, I wanted to be there for all that stuff, but there's not a chance in hell my mom was gonna let me go to, like, Maple Leaf Gardens to see a show or something. Um, but I love the Smashing Pumpkin. I even like the later stuff too, like, it's all just, like, really good guitar work. Um, so they would probably be my, like, first favorite band, if that makes sense. I was really into Silverchair as well. Planes Mistaken for Stars was a big deal for me. I really, really love that band. There's a band from Canada called Monine that was like a life-changing experience for me when I was my teenage years. Very quickly I saw them in a very small club, about 45 minutes from where I grew up, which is I grew up in like a small town way outside of Toronto where I live now. And they played the only way I can describe this show is chaotic. They had pulled the drop ceiling down in the venue during the first song of their 45 minutes of chaos. Like there's no other way to play it. It was fucking wild. And like I left that show being like, I'm only playing music now. I don't care about anything else. And it's been way too many years since then, and I still feel exactly the same. That band changed my life. Um, Cave-In is my favorite band of all time. I celebrate the entire discography. I like everything they do. But Monine was a like I don't know if I should thank them or blame them, but they changed my life in such a drastic way that that's like kind of the answer. Like when people are asking about this, like Monine does not sound anything like Low Heaven, but the impact that they had on my life and my focus and my everything, from being like a musician that wants to be in a band and loves music to being wholeheartedly obsessed and singularly focused, like Monine did that. And I'm very I consider myself very lucky to have that experience, but also to see a show of that caliber means sometimes when I see a show and it's not anywhere close to that, I'm like, oh, and I don't just enjoy it in the way that a music fan should. But yeah, those are kind of the ones, like I listen to the discography constantly. It's probably not a week that goes by that I don't listen to at least one of their records. And then I kind of float in and out of other stuff too. I try and listen to as much new things as I can, things that are coming out that friends suggest to me. Or there's a band from Toronto here called Sundowner that put out an amazing record earlier this year. And I just try my best to kind of pay attention to everything else that's going on, but always go back to those bands. Smashing Pumpkins, Planes Mistaken for Stars. Like I'm always going back to those. They always feel fresh to me, even if they were recorded in 1997. Like it's great.
Yeah, it's the some those first bands that got you to love music is the ones that you keep going for because I think it's memories. They're embedded in your brain. You're reminded of when you discovered them. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, and I feel the same way about words too. Like lyrics are very important to me, words are very important to me. And there's an artist up here in Canada named Matthew Good, and it was the same thing there. Like I got into what it was because it was kind of like a radio friendly kind of not quite as heavy as some of the grunge bands, but kind of in that world. But his lyrics are on another level, like when you see how he writes stuff and you see how vulnerable but also vindictive it can be, like I started getting to that into that when I was like 13. And then I've kept with those records. There's a specific like area of like four records that he put out where it's the same sort of thing of like if I feel like I need some motivation or some inspiration for like how I should be writing and remind myself of that, I can go back and listen to those records as well because there's just something to how he puts words together that screams in my head, like it just stays that way. And I've spent a lot of my lyric time trying to write in my version of that. And there's just something beautiful about any kind of art that hangs with you like that. Like something that you hear when you're 12 years old that you still listen to when you're 60. Like that's magic. Like that's something that humans created that made this thing that like you can't get from a lot of other stuff.
yeah, and I love listening to music and being able to read the lyrics as well. I think that's something that's kind of lost now. People are like, "Oh, yes, it's heavy," but what are they singing about? Like,
Yeah.
like also that I like it more when it doesn't have to be all the way heavy, but if it have like heavy like emotional lyrics, and that's why bands like Death Heaven, Super Heaven, you guys, I'm drawn to that because it's heavy, but it also the lyrics, they make you think about stuff, and they're more deep than just being
Yeah.
about like we're fucking heavy, zombies are coming, something like that. I
Yeah, I agree with you, and I also think that that has to do with like the eras of music that we grew up with, where there was a bit more to focus on. I think people had more time to make the art that they were making. Like you think about how many times you've heard bands that are like, "Oh, it took them 4 years to write up their next record," and then that comes out and it's fucking a masterpiece. And nowadays, it's like the consumption level is so quick that you don't have that art developing in the same way. But also, I think that the stuff that's coming out, you appreciate it more. Like I can remember buying the double CD of Melancholy, going home and like looking through the whole thing as I was listening to it, and that's like what is it, 2 hours and 18 minutes of music on there? Like it's an insane amount of music, but you got to read along to everything in that booklet.
It's like 224, and I
Yeah,
remember on CD in the 90s, that shit was expensive. That was like a $25, $30,
yeah.
because a double album.
I don't know why I remember this, but I remember it was 38.99 at the record store that I bought it at. Because I bought a lot of CDs back then. I bought a lot of CDs until I started buying records. And then when I started buying records, I stopped buying CDs. But I for some reason some of these numbers stick out. Like I can remember buying Japanese import CDs and they were always 54.99. Like that was the price for them every time. It's so stupid, but like I was like, no problem. Like, so
Yeah, yeah. No, back then it was like buying that was like a big deal. Buying something. Uh,
yeah.
so yeah, so it's been awesome talking to you about music and stuff. So Dan, I know you. So the album's coming out at the end of August. Uh, are you guys gonna like when's the touring? When can people see you live?
So there's going to be some more stuff kind of trickling out. We had something that we thought was set up and in the bag that ended up falling apart. So we were ready to announce a whole bunch of stuff. So we've got some shows in July. We've got some stuff in September coming up, and there's just going to be more and more as it goes. We're really ready to kind of get out and road dog it and like play all of this for everybody. Opportunities arise and we try and take as many as we can that make sense for us. So uh, but we're going to be out there and we're going to be out there a lot. And we've spent so long kind of sitting on this record, waiting for a chance to release it, waiting for a chance to promote it, that now we're ready to be like, let's go play 1,000 shows and like really get out here and like give people the experience. And we're ready to go wherever it makes sense to. And right now it's just like working with our agent and our management and all this stuff to make sure that whatever comes out is the best version of what we can do, and that's just going to keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. So if we're not coming somewhere right away, I can guarantee you we're working on it, and there's just going to be more and more to be able to share, and hopefully get out and be able to play these songs in different ways and make them kind of take their life of their own versus the recorded version. Like we're just excited for all of that. I can't tell you how tough it was to sit on a record for like 3 years and not put anything out. It's a little bit tough, and we had to do it, and so now we get that chance to be, let's go out and fucking do it.
Yeah, and these songs like are gonna sound amazing. Are you already thinking of newer music or just concentrating on the album?
I'm always kind of fiddling. I've got a folder in my phone that's a lot of like either voice memos of me like singing a riff or like little guitar things that are going. We're not actively writing right now because there's just so much to kind of go back and digest and, figure out set lists and figure out ways that we're going to do this and how are we going to achieve this sound live that we do recorded. Are we going to try and do this version? There's just so much to kind of figure out, and we also take a significant amount of pride in our live show. So there's a lot of like practicing and muscle memory and really focusing down so that when we go out and play a show, people are like, holy shit, that's better than what I was expecting. I know once we start getting back to writing, it's going to be a different experience because we're not all stuck in our apartments. There's new members of the band, there's new members of doing stuff, and I think that that's going to be an interesting thing that we have to sort out exactly how we're going to do all of this stuff. But it's an exciting prospect to think of down the road. Does that mean something won't pop out? Like it does. Sometimes you don't even mean to, and you write a song. But right now, we're really focused on the live show. We're really focused on the touring. We're really focused on getting out there and giving these songs their due worth.
Awesome. And if in the future the Free Heaven tours happen, you'll say Hector the Shield dude on a couch did an Inception. Like
Listen, if this happens, I will send you a gift basket. Okay, like.
go to that show.
Yeah. Listen, we're putting it out into the universe, so hopefully something cool will happen.
Hopefully. So Dan, it's been great talking with you. I'll post the link for people who want to pre-order for MNRK Heavy. I'm sure it's gonna be out on vinyl, CD. The
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff going out there. You'll be able to digest it at whatever digital place you like to consume music. Like there's going to be all different kinds of options. Hopefully, people are excited enough to buy the record because I do think that's the best presentation of everything. You're getting all the liner notes, you're getting all the visuals the way we expect it, but realistically speaking, everybody digests music in a different way. So we want to give everybody the experience that they're looking for.
So is there going to be a vinyl that shed tears? No, I'm kidding. I'm joking.
That'd be pretty cool.
You imagine you play the record and tears.
You just water everywhere by the time you're done. You've just ruined your cassette head.
You never know, because there's some vinyls that they do now that they have like colors that move and stuff. So you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a few years down the road we'll be surprised.
So, Couchers, I would recommend Low Heaven if you like all the bands that we've been discussing. And the album Ritual Decay is out on August the 29th. So, Dan, I want to thank you for joining me from Canada here to Puerto Rico. So, before I let you go, anything you like to say to the fans before we go?
Oh, we just appreciate you being here. There's so much music out there nowadays. Hopefully, the earnest attempt at displaying emotion and the way that we did things really resonates with people. But even just getting an opportunity to have someone take a listen is kind of all we can ask for. So anything extra is awesome, but we're just happy to have you here. We're just happy to get a chance.
Awesome, man. So, again, thank you for joining me. So, until next time, Couchers, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a Couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you and goodbye.